A very good evening. Welcome in the ring. So much happening home here in Guyana and internationally, especially in the United States of America. And guys, you know, when you come on, we ask that you share the live stream. We don't have any time to waste this evening. We have quite a few people stopping by. One very, very important guest, Mr. 𝗪𝗧 𝗵𝗴, is here with us, and I want to bring him on right away. We aren't wasting any time this evening. My brother, a very good evening and welcome. So much to unpack, as my colleague Randolph Krishna would say. So much to unpack this evening. 𝗪𝗧, how are you?
Good night. Happy New Year to you. I'm well.
Happy New Year to you and the family as well. And I'm happy to hear that you are well despite what is developing at your end. 𝗪𝗧, tell us what we're seeing here coming out of the Congress of the United States. I mean, it almost looks like a third world country, 𝗪𝗧. I know if you left one third world country for the next. Tell us what's happening.
Let me say, I think I'm as well as American democracy. What I think there shouldn't be much cause for concern other than the fact that you have one person trying to hang on to power. Because potentially of all the crimes he may have committed, he wants to hang on to power so he will not be held to account. And what he's been doing is trying to rile up his supporters to basically overthrow American democracy. What happened today? Listen, like I said to one of my a friend of mine who's a member of Congress from California just now, I am not concerned mostly with what Donald Trump says. I'm not concerned with what he does. My focus today is on the complete failure of law enforcement. These are not unusual protests. There are protests like these at the same magnitude like this every day in America. What happens though is that law enforcement controls those protests, and if they tend to get out of hand, they restrain protesters. If possible, they arrest them and charge them if they break the law. What we saw today is law enforcement completely down in arms and allowing racist protesters to overrun the United States Capitol. What we saw today was an insurrection led by Donald Trump. He called for it. Rudy Giuliani called for it. It is a criminal. It is criminal behavior. And I'm pretty sure that they will be held to account. But I think we should not be too much concerned about that. What is concerning is the complete breakdown of law enforcement. That's where the issue is. When there were Black Lives Matter throughout protests throughout the United States, Sherrod, Donald Trump and all his little minions around him, right, deployed armed federal agents all across the United States of America to put down peaceful protests of Black people. Today, we see that they're begging these white racist insurrectionists, domestic terrorists, to disperse. What they did at Lafayette Square in July, they shot protesters. They fired pepper spray and tear gas. Just first in Portland, Oregon, and in Seattle, they were shooting people, shooting them with a rubber bullet.
People have been shot and killed in the US for less than that.
Right. So these people broke into the United States Capitol, damaged property, run up and down in the speaker's office, possibly stole documents that are classified or whatever it is. And law enforcement was just taking photographs with them as though they're doing something heroic. So we look forward to see criminal charges against these people who participated in this little insurrection today.
But while you're saying that, and while even the president of the United States was asking for peace and calm, he was still talking about being cheated out of an election and a rigged election. It is bizarre.
I don't think we should focus on what the president of the United States is saying. The president of the United States is a buffoon. The man has no honor and no decency. And he knows, listen, there's absolutely no truth to anything that elections were rigged. Everybody is just casting it aside. It is just a scam to keep his supporters intact and to raise funds. That's what it is. It's a scam. And today he had the assistance of members of the United States Congress who stood up and cheered, as Republicans attempted to overthrow democracy. And they should resign. I hope those members of Congress who endorsed, were complicit with this insurrection would resign. But I want to say to you guys that this is nothing new. Every day we have protests in America, large violent protests in America. What matters most is that law enforcement preserves peace, law and order, and protect people and property. They chose not to do that today because, as far as I'm concerned, they're part of it.
Good, and that's what I want to come to. You know, some people spoke to the fact that recently there was the Black Lives protest, as you did mention, right there at the Capitol, and there was so much of a police presence. Do you think there is some kind of a collusion, and this is what you hear in this administration all the time, with collusion with the executive and armed forces?
There was definitely complicity with some law enforcement officers. They allowed it to happen. Number one, I think the chief of the Capitol Police should resign. There was no planning for this. We've been hearing for weeks Donald Trump saying, come on to the Capitol on the 6th, let's have a wild rally. We're going to fight like hell. And they made absolutely no contingency, no security plan for this. They started scrambling around for additional law enforcement agents after this thing happened. And I based on my information, is that when the mayor of DC, who has control of the National Guards, requested them to come and assist the law enforcement of the Capitol and Metropolitan Police, which kind of changes the mandate of the National Guard a little, which means that it had to go through the ranks of the Pentagon. They refused to do it. It was the governor of Virginia, because, you know, DC comes under control of the federal government. So they have to get approval for certain things. But it was the governor of Virginia, who is the commander-in-chief of his own National Guard, who dispatched the National Guard from Virginia, and the governor of Maryland, who dispatched some law enforcement assets from his state that came in to add reinforcement to the security of Metropolitan Police and the Capitol Police. It is disgraceful. And you would remember during the Black Lives Matter protests, all of which were peaceful, they had officers from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, officers from the National Park Police, Homeland Security, all of these people Donald Trump deployed. Why? They were black people. They were black people. Now you have white racists who are protesting the fact that the person they want got voted out of office, and secretly their objection is to a black vice president. And the law enforcement officers did nothing. They stood up and they allowed them to overrun the Capitol. Serious heads would roll. I'm pretty sure you'll see some significant resignations, Charlotte.
Rickford, you know, folks at home, well, let me start by saying it seems as though you don't want to place too much emphasis on Trump because he has 16 days to go. But folks here at home cannot help but to draw some parallel. One, the storming of the Capitol with the storming of 𝗁𝗏 building, the 𝗁𝗏 Ashman's building on Hatfield Street, one. And then two, America had a large role to play in the outcome of our election. And then we see a totally different thing happening where they are, where you guys are.
Well, if you notice, right, let's draw the parallels. The American ambassador, who's a Trump ambassador, she never condemned what happened at 𝗁𝗏. She never condemned what happened in Region 5 at Bad Settlement, and the other places there where they had riots, where somebody was shot for attacking police officers. She's never condemned any of that. Why? Because it was part of their strategy to destabilize the government, to make the government give up power. I remember speaking to a member of the United States government who said to me that the decision by the ABC ambassadors and CARICOM was not to focus on those that set of violence, because the underlying desire was for the government to leave power. So they were part of, to me, inciting all of those activities. If you listen to the rhetoric, if you analyze their behavior, they encouraged it. And now we're seeing the same thing. Now, exactly what Trump is trying to do is what they did in Guyana. The difference is we had a very weak leader who gave power and allowed them to basically take over the government with fraudulent votes. And they were trying the same thing here in the United States. It did not work. It didn't work with the voters. It didn't work with the local elections officials who counted those votes. It did not work with the canvassing boards. It did not work with the state elections officials. It did not work in the courts. And now they're trying to bully Congress. And it's not going to work. And what they're doing now is trying to employ violence. That's not going to work either.
𝗪𝗏, do you think with all of this happening that America is going to further lose that moral authority or that voice on the international stage? Because you can't have something like this happening in the US of A, and then you come in to tell me how I should manage my affairs in Venezuela or in Guyana. Clearly, it has repercussions.
I think the rest of the world realized that Trump is an autocrat, a wannabe dictator, and a demagogue. And I think everyone realizes that this challenge to democracy in America is limited to this period. I think that when President Biden is sworn in, his administration would move swiftly to reinforce American democracy, reinforce American exceptionalism, and reinforce the democratic values that this country stands for and has been a beacon to the world for what democracy is. So I think it's a temporary setback for democracy, but the rest of the world understand that we have a demagogue and a clown who is trying to pretend to be a dictator and who admire people like Putin and so on. And so he's trying to hang on to power. It's not going to happen. And I think America is going to be restored back to the beacon of democracy that the world is accustomed to.
𝗪𝗏, you referred to Mr. Granger early on, or who I think is Mr. Granger. But in the same breath, you called Trump a wannabe dictator. I mean, folks called Mr. Granger a sanctimonious gangster. I mean, clearly, what is happening in the
US? They
US?
call Mr. Granger what? A sanctimonious gangster?
Yeah. Clearly, they have the adjectives mixed up.
I wish he was.
Clearly, they have the adjectives mixed up. Because, I mean, look what is happening. And you have the likes of Sarah Palin, you had the likes of Mia Motley, you had the likes of Ralph Gonsalves. These were the people who were...
You mean Sarah Lynch? You mean Sarah Lynch?
Sarah Lynch, yes.
Yeah,
these folks talking about a peaceful transfer of power and so forth. And then America, that has to set the example, is doing something totally contrary. And 𝗪𝗏, you and I know, even with 60 days to go, Trump ain't going quietly. Are you prepared for the worst?
Well, we've already seen lots of people calling for his resignation. We had a general who's a four-star general, retired General Barry McCarthy of the U.S. Army is now calling for his removal. I noticed a few Republican governors are calling for his removal. Several members of Congress are now calling for his removal. There will be accountability. What happened today?
This is calling for his removal with 16 days to go.
No, calling for his immediate removal. Calling for his immediate removal. I think there will be accountability. Whether the accountability comes now or the accountability comes after he leaves office, I expect that there will be accountability. I expect that the Attorney General of Washington, D.C. will take action. I expect a Joe Biden Justice Department to take action. So I think there will be accountability. Clearly today, there were significant breaches of the United States Constitution and U.S. law, criminal law, by Donald Trump, by Rudy Giuliani, and some of the inciters of this insurrection. And I anticipate that there will be consequences.
𝗪𝗏, I know you're a guy with a lot of foresight and on these issues, international affairs, international issues. Did you see a day like today coming? Yes. I mean, we are in shock and awe on this side of the Atlantic.
No. I anticipated it. This is the normal scene at a Trump rally, where they rile people up to attack people and all that. What I am disappointed about is the breakdown of law enforcement. Law enforcement allowed these protesters to overrun the Capitol. There could be no, let me tell you this, if I were to collect 100 men from Brooklyn and we were to march to the Capitol with arms, and bear in mind, it is illegal to bear arms in DC unless you have a permit. So you can have a permit in any other state. Unless you have a permit in Washington, DC, it's a felony to carry arms. Some of these people were armed. But if I were to take 100 men unarmed to have a peaceful, noisy protest in Washington, D.C., the troops would be out, right? They will shoot me. If I attempt to break into the speaker's office, as you see the video, they're breaking down the doors to the Senate. They broke down the doors to the Senate. I would be shot dead. I would be shot dead as a black man. So there's a problem in America. White people who think that they own this country and that black people and brown people have no right to elect a president. And because we came out in record numbers and they feel that they have the right to object to it violently. And they're being egged on by a demagogue who's a coward and a buffoon, because if you remove him from the White House there, right? Or if you put him on a stage and somebody said, boom, he can run, right? So he's a demagogue and a coward, and he's lying to these people. And you know what? Nobody believes, maybe a few clowns, that Trump won the election. No, they don't. They know he didn't win the election, but they want to protest the fact that Joe Biden is associated with the first black president, and he's given a black vice president, and that black people and brown people will have say again in this country. That's what this insurrection is about.
Rickford, do you think we're living parallel lives? Because the similarities are so eerie. Again, in this intrusion, and we dare say insurrection now at GCOM, we saw PPP and their operatives kicking down doors, going through files, opening drawers, all of that. I mean, Mark Benchcock was jailed for treason for less than that. Less than that. Mark was in a protest by the office of the president. They claim that he tried to breach the fence, and Mark was jailed for less than that. These
5 years.
On GCOM, break doors and all of that, and were bold enough to even go on Facebook Live and to say this publicly. Right, and we see the same thing happen at the Congress. I mean, the similarities are so eerie. When you look at the amount of votes Trump was asking the governor or whoever it was to steal for him, is the same amount of votes that the PP won the East Coast by. Right, the similarities are so eerie, and this is not 10 years after. This is barely 6 months we're in.
Like I said to you before, the PPP has been trying to mirror Trump, mirror his autocratic behavior, mirror him as a despot, wannabe, and mirror his racism. That's what 𝗪 has been doing, and has been forcing, basically, the people around him in the PPP to do. The PPP is an ethnocracy. The PPP is an autocratic bunch of people. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in a pluralistic society where people should live in harmony. They believe that they should be a one-party state controlling everything and acting like they are controlling a plantation. The PPP does not believe that black people have rights. The PPP doesn't believe that the political opponents should coexist in the political space. And all of those things Donald Trump believes, right? So why the PPP is taking a playbook out of Donald Trump's page? The only reason they were able to get with Sherlock at the GCOM building is because David Granger, as the president of Guyana, did not direct the security forces to enforce the law. That's it. In America today, this happened because the security forces did not enforce the law. So when you have weak leadership and lack security, or security that is complicit with rioters, this is what we get. I know a lot of people are going to be upset with me for criticizing David Granger, but that's just my view.
Wow. You know, I saw Ronald Austin posted on social media early on that I'm trying to quote what he said, that the leader of the coup must be arrested. Rickford.
I think that the persons who incited the insurrection today will be prosecuted. I absolutely believe that.
Wow. You know, it's incredible, Rickford. But these are the times that we are living in, to see America descend into this kind of thing. I mean, I think that you are on the valuing the international effect this is going to have, even
No.
in the White House.
I'm not undervaluing it. I don't want to give credence to any of Donald Trump's antics. I understand that the people around the world would be disappointed, because America goes around the world and tells people how to conduct their elections. America goes around the world and tell heads of government who lose elections that they have to leave office. And the president of the United States, right, who was elected with the help of Russia and who was never a legitimate president, has now lost the election and wants to hang on to power. And he is trying to destroy American democracy. I understand that. But the point I'm making is that the world expects this from Donald Trump. What the world did not expect is a failure of law enforcement to maintain law and order in the United States Capitol and to protect those members of Congress. That's where the failure is. And I think the Capitol Police Chief is going to pay the price for this. He completely failed to plan for this. I heard a member of Congress, tears came to my eyes, a member of Congress from Pennsylvania saying that last night, when she was traveling coming here, or while she was settled in DC, preparing to come today, she called her husband and told him where her will was, because she knew that something like this would happen. I expected this behavior, right? What I did not expect, and what I'm still shocked about, is that law enforcement allowed it to happen. They allowed it to happen for 3 or 4 hours. This was deliberate. The police, some of these police officers were complicit. I saw some of them taking pictures with these rioters. I saw Senator Josh Hawley, who was one of the leaders of this insurrection from Missouri, taking pictures with people who were breaking into the Senate and breaking into the House chambers and carrying arms and throwing flash bombs in the Congress. And mind you, they left 3 bombs in the Congress. So this is not only that they broke into to overrun the Congress. They allegedly left explosive device, based on reports I'm hearing from the FBI. They left bombs in the Capitol. There were either 2 or 3 bombs they left there.
Rickford, it was incredible for me to see a member of Congress, I think, coming live from his office, a smoke-filled office. He said that they were told to retrieve the gas mask somewhere that is usually placed in the office for storage. I mean, when he talked about a gas mask because of tear gas being, I mean, this is the Congress of the United States, not the United Third World States, but the United States of America. And
you were right to say earlier that it descended into a banana republic. This was an act of terrorism. This was domestic terrorism. They left bombs in the Congress. They terrorized members of Congress. How the hell, Sharon, can terrorists get into the United States Congress when it's in session? Fulfilling a constitutional responsibility. And listen to this. Listen to how dangerous this situation was. You had the entire succession of the United States government in Congress, and there were no protection. The vice president is the third in line. The speaker sorry, the vice president is the second in line to the presidency. The speaker is the third. The president pro tem of the Senate is the fourth. All of these people who normally protected people were in there, and the police allowed these people to breach. Not one, they didn't fire one shot, they didn't fire rubber bullets, they fired not, but they were firing all of those things on peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters who were protesting this slaughter of Black people in this country by police officers.
Yeah. Rickford, you know, again, I'm looking at some of the comments here. So many people are shocked to see what is happening in the United States of America. And I know Trump had a certain description for some countries. And I have to ask you, because in the past, we have all looked up to America as that ideal. Is America becoming a shithole country?
Trump is attempting to make it that because he's lost elections and he wants to exact vengeance against the American people. That will not happen. I'm pretty sure the guardrails of democracy will go. Listen, I just happen to think that Trump is as powerful as we make him and the Republicans in Congress make him. If the media had completely ignored that man with his nonsense, he would not have felt this empowered. He's feeling empowered now that he's so powerful that he got his people to go and overrun the Congress after he incited them and went back to his luxurious White House. He's not out there with the people. The people are out there by themselves, right? He doesn't care anything. What he is doing is trying to stay engaged with his supporters by lying to them, by being a demagogue and perpetrating a scam so that he can continue to raise money. Listen, all the filings they have gone to court and done, 82. They filed 82 lawsuits. It was a scam because none of the lawsuits alleged fraud. Believe you me, none of them alleged fraud. All of these lawsuits allege procedural breaches. Oh, my observer was not allowed to stand close enough to observe what is on the ballot that you are pushing in the machine. Or my observers were not allowed to see what was behind that curtain. That's what the lawsuits, none of them alleged fraud, or that they weren't supposed to count some ballots that they counted because some legislature didn't say something, or we didn't get to verify that the signatures on absentee ballots are the correct ones. They have no role in that under the law. Elections officials do that. Elections officials do that. So they themselves did not even allege fraud. Matter of fact, Rudy Giuliani went to court in Pennsylvania, and the judge asked him, "You are saying fraud. Where is the presentation of the evidence of fraud in this lawsuit?"
What's the evidence?
Alleging fraud.
Well, we saw Rudy mascara running, so that speaks for itself.
Coloring was running, nothing here.
Well, Rickford, again, I know you got foresight on these issues. 16 days to go. What do you think comes next?
I think there will be tremendous pressure for him to be removed. Obviously, he's set on destroying the country as a means of getting revenge for the voters who vote him out. He wants to destroy the country. And I think to the extent that we're giving him publicity and attention is giving him oxygen to perpetuate his destruction. So that's why I have the strategy, and I've been saying to my folk around my Democratic circles that I don't think anybody should pay him out of any other mind other than now there should be serious talk of him being prosecuted. What we need to do is ensure that the sentinels who are supposed to guard democracy in this country, ensure that law enforcement who are supposed to maintain law and order, they should do their job. And senators should do their job, which is to go back to the Senate tonight and verify the votes as mandated by the Constitution. The Constitution says on the 6th day of January, they shall meet at 1 o'clock. Open the ballots and count them and announce the winner. That's all they have to do. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them any right to verify anything. The votes are already verified and certified by the state and transmitted to the Congress. The Constitution says the Congress shall open those seal envelopes, count the votes cast by the electors for each person, and announce what the votes are. That's all it has to do. Congress should go back tonight and do their constitutional job.
Rick, again, the similarities are so eerie because one would have said the same simple process should have obtained here. Lohn-Field looks at the results generated from the recount, valid votes only, and then he declares, right?
But you know, we have not addressed something. We don't address something that happened in the Guyana elections. We allow the PPP to hijack this narrative that something that happened in Region 4 was fraudulent. What happened in Region 4, based on my reading of what was taking place and my analysis, is that somebody, I don't know who, in Region 4 was announcing valid votes only. The Court of Appeal subsequently ratified that only valid votes should be counted. The chief elections officer then presented valid votes only based on what the Court of Appeal mandated until the Court of Appeal's decision was overturned by the CCJ. So what the people in Region 4 were doing was presenting valid votes only. But you know who is only calling for valid votes? Donald Trump, right? The Trump administration is saying in an election in America, only valid votes should be counted. So if only valid votes should be counted in America, only valid votes were counted. Only valid votes were counted. They were already making that statement to give the impression to people that invalid votes were counted, which was not true. But in the Guyana situation, in order to implement the Trump plan, which is to get the PPP in power and use Guyana as a platform to attack Venezuela, which didn't work because of the amount of pressure they got from here, they wanted invalid votes to be counted. So everything that they pushed in Guyana over here, and they attacked the APNU government for, they're doing it here. And Sarah Lynch, right, who is also a racist, just like Donald Trump.
Talk to me now, Rick.
Huh?
I take your notes. Talk to me now. I take your notes.
Yeah. Sarah Lynch, who's just a demagogue, just like Donald Trump, who wants to ensure that the PPP subjugate Black people, just like her party here is doing. She is silent now. She's silent. She's so embarrassed she can't even issue one statement about American democracy now. Because, go ahead.
Again, some eerie similarities. I noticed Gary Greenwich is saying here, Pence to return to Washington, certification to resume. This sounds as though out of the court case, Mingo is back at Hatfield Street, recounting to continue.
Well, no, listen, the vice president is an American. The vice president, even though he has been walking this tightrope, prepared to be loyal to Trump, which he should, he's a vice president, has been standing up for the Constitution. He issued a statement today saying, listen, the Constitution give me a role and I can play that role. I understand that it was the vice president who called for the National Guard to be deployed, not Trump. It is the vice president, because he probably has political ambitions. And let me tell you this, what the Republicans are doing is going to start a movement in this country for the removal of the Electoral College. It's an undemocratic process. The Electoral College was put in there to make sure that white people and people who own slaves and plantations and so on in these states had control of who is elected the president and not the people, the popularity of the people. And so what they're going to do is allow people now to start to call for the removal of the Electoral College and for the president to be elected by popular vote like any other office in this country. And if they do that, the Republicans will be banished into the political wilderness, because the Republicans can't win no popular vote in America.
Again, Rick, the similarities are so eerie. Look, Chanel Wills telling us that Pence has to complete his task. This was the High Court telling Mingo has to complete his task. This is March 2nd. Well, the whole recount happening all over again 5 months later, this time in the US.
The problem with that is that Pence, if he refuses to do that, could be mandated by a court to do it, right? So all the shenanigans they're doing, you have the judiciary there, and I'm pretty sure if Pence wants to make sure the Constitution is upheld, you know why? It would spell doom for the Republican Party. And Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, who carried on the Donald Trump agenda in Congress today, I'm pretty sure because they want to capture Trump supporters to run for president, their political careers are over. Because when they want to run for president in 2024, all of these videos will be played today and they incited that. So it would be like a general from the Confederate Army fighting against the Union. So they will go down in history, in ignominy, for being insurrectionists and for allowing people with Confederate flags to overrun the Capitol. And you know the other thing too? It is clownish, Sharon. It is clownish because you know what? Senator Hawley, Senator Ted Cruz, and all of these buffoons who Republican members of Congress were elected on the same ballot. The people elected them on the same ballot in which they rejected Donald Trump. So if they're going to follow Trump's clunky yard and say that elections were rigged, all of them should come into Congress because their elections were fraudulent too. They were elected on the same ballot. It's the same election. So how I conduct fraud on the things at the bottom of the ballot,
it's only top part.
Vote for is fraudulent. What nonsense is that? It is irrational. And the people know that. These people went in there and voted. They know it's one ballot. You take off president, vice president, senator, congressman, governor, mayor. One ballot. One ballot. So how there could be fraud at the top and everything else at the bottom is not fraud because you're part of the and you get voted in at the bottom.
Rickford, you know, as folks from this part of the region or the international community, what do we take away from this? What lessons are in this for countries such as ours?
That the American people that some people in America, in protest to the first Black president being elected, proceeded to elect a racist demagogue who was an autocrat and a dictator wannabe, and who admired such people around the world like Vladimir Putin and President Xi and Kim Jong, whatever his name in North Korea. And when he was rejected for re-election, decided to burn the house down and try to incite his people to commit insurrection. And it should not be tolerated in this country. It is unacceptable. It's against the law. And he should be treated like all the persons who committed treason in history were treated.
If I tell you I'm not in shock, I tell you a lie. We are just in shock. And I would argue it's the whole Latin America, the whole Caribbean, everything this side, well, everything outside of America. It'll be interesting to see the context Britain puts on this. It'll be interesting to see what Canada says of this. It'll be interesting to see what the European Union says of this, because all of them have a stake. Each of them have embassies in different parts of the world. Each of them bring to bear their own democratic norms and principles, because anything that is not democratic seems to be ungodly. We had just this afternoon those folks in the countries like Iraq and so forth, Saudi Arabia and so forth, seem to be toasting to this madness. Because now, what can you tell us about our system of government that we have, whether it's autocracy, whether it's the, because you have this bastion of democracy and will of the people, and clearly that is what is prevailing today.
And that's why there should be consequences. The consequences should be with law enforcement and those senators who egged this on and participated in the insurrection. Donald Trump is a showman. He wants to demonstrate that he's a strong man. He wants a strong man in terms of a semi-dictator. He wants to demonstrate that he has support. And so he engineered and incited this spectacle. We all anticipated that. The failure and the shock is that US law enforcement allowed this to happen. And it's unfathomable. It's unimaginable. Police officers were just doing nothing. It was when it got really out of hand and they invaded these Capitol chambers, that's when the law enforcement guys start to say, well, oh boy, I think we got to start doing something. Other than that, they did nothing. They stood there and allowed those people to overrun the place. And they did not make any plans for this type of thing. DC police is one of the best police forces in the country, in the world, in terms of crowd support, control. DC, New York, the two best law enforcement agencies in the world with crowd control. How the hell they allow this nonsense to happen in DC? And they were shooting Black Lives Matter supporters who were unarmed. Half of these people that were running around today had guns.
Yeah, it was again unfathomable, unthinkable to see guns drawn in the, what do you call it, in the Senate?
In the United States Capitol building, yeah. It was not only in the Senate, it was in both chambers.
It was shocking to see a man who isn't elected standing in the speaker's chair.
and they invaded the speaker's office. They were not only that, they were standing in the vice president chair of the Senate. You know, the vice president is the president of the Senate.
Yeah.
There was a woman standing there in the vice president chair of the Senate, the presiding officer's chair.
Rickford, let me ask you a $1 million question, a US $1 million question. There's an international observer group who is now observing the US elections for the very first time, even though they come out of the US. Where is the Carter Center?
What is the Carter Center? We don't know anything about the Carter Center in America. Nobody pays attention to the Carter Center. The Carter Center is something that operates external to the United States. Carter Center has no respect in the United States. Nobody listens to them, right? President Carter has some standing as a former president, but Jason Carter don't have no standing in America. Nobody cares about anything he has to say. It is only when they come to countries like Guyana and other third world countries, they try to act like if they have any sort of moral authority or anything. They don't. In Georgia, where the Carter Center is based, the Republicans have been trying to take off Black people off the roll because they realize that Black people and brown people are increasing their numbers in terms of registration. That's why we were able to win Georgia last night, right? And the Republicans' counter to that is not to go and register more people or bring in more people to live in Georgia or whatever it is. No, you know what? They're take people off the rolls, take Democrats off the roll, take Black people and Spanish people off the voters list, challenge you, say you now who you are, right? Voter suppression. That's what they were doing. And the Carter Center is silent, quiet. They don't have no authority, no voice in this country. So when they go to my own country and they talk all this nonsense, that's why I say to Jason Carter, go to hell, because you have no voice in your own country. Don't come and lecture to us. Lecture to America, because that's where the breaches in democracy are, in America. Under Donald Trump, we've seen Donald Trump try to take off the guardrails of American democracy, while Sarah Lynch in Guyana is dictating how elections should be run and how we must exercise and practice our democracy. For the wicked. of people
Hypocrites.
the people who she likes and against who she doesn't like, which is black people. That's why she must hightail out of Guyana.
Agreed.
But
Rickford,
I'm
you mentioned
on the brown chariot for this woman to leave the country.
Which is what I'm coming to. You mentioned Georgia just now, and just to give people an idea, let's take, we have the opposition, we have the government here. You had, I think, 48 opposition, you had 50 government in terms of Senate and the House. There were some elections recently there, we call runoffs. How did they go, and what strategies can we learn from what happened there?
Well, the Democrats won both of the seats in Georgia, and Georgia is a red state. It's now a blue state because we won the presidency and we won the U.S. Senate. So the Democrats now control the United States Senate because it's 50-50. And under the law, if there's a 50-50 vote in the United States Senate, the vice president, which is the president of the Senate, casts the deciding vote. So based on that, the Democrats will control the Senate. Now, the lessons first to learn: organize.
Unless you have a charter.
Organize. Go to every possible eligible voter. Get that voter registered, and then ensure that that voter gets out and vote on elections. That's how you win elections. Elections are won at registration. That's how Barack Obama won twice, and that's how Joe Biden won now, and that's how Reverend Warnock and John Assaf won last night. Organizing, organizing, organize. Get your voters registered, organize for them to vote. Simple.
Excellent. Rickford, I don't know if I asked you all of the questions, but you can, what am I missing?
Nothing. I think I'm talking too much.
No, the people here love you, Rickford, and we need that voice out there in the diaspora, especially in North America, who can frame things for us. Because again, you got people like Sarah Lynch and the others trying to contextualize stuff, and then we know that they're not practicing what they preach by any measure. And I agree with you. Sarah should go. Sarah should pack up with her boss and just go. And just go, and I think one of the challenges we have here too, I don't know if it's so prevalent where you are, but those big voices who can step into a situation and speak to it clearly without any bias or rancor or any partisaness, it's totally lacking, not only here at home in Guyana, but in the region. I mean, you look at Ralph Gonzalez, who is more biased and partisan. 𝗵𝗵 𝗪. I see now Mr. Rawley is taking over the chairmanship of CARICOM. I mean, as a region, Rickford, you have that international view. Where do we go from where we are?
I personally happen to think CARICOM is a waste of time. CARICOM has not achieved anything, as far as I'm concerned, within the last 2 decades, other than a passport. Right? CARICOM is a failed geopolitical union. I'm not even sure why Guyana is still a part of CARICOM. The people of CARICOM may be united, but the leaders don't want to be united. I think in CARICOM there's a bias against Guyanese, and the bias has been exacerbated by the isolationist policies of David Granger. And because David Granger was an isolationist leader that isolated our nation, he allowed Bar Jagdeo to ingratiate himself back into the fore of those CARICOM leaders and mobilized against him. And David Granger did nothing to counter the propaganda that Bar Jagdeo was spreading around CARICOM. One of the CARICOM heads told me that personally. Why is he responding? Right? I wrote the president then, Mr. Granger, and tell him, you have to respond to these CARICOM leaders. Right? Every leader, they didn't do it. But that's a different story. But there's a bias in CARICOM against Guyanese. The CARICOM secretariat is biased against Guyanese. And it's not only a bias against Guyanese, it's biased against Black Guyanese. Because the propaganda that went out into CARICOM is that Black people are against democracy, Black people are criminals or whatever, and we don't count this. So now that the PPP is implementing all this racist policy, and the PPP back then killed all those people, CARICOM was told that the people we killing are criminals, right? And it's just fine. Yeah. It's label a man and criminal and kill him, right? We didn't pressure CARICOM to push the government to solve the Isaiah Joel Henry murders? No. So we as a community, as APNU, AFC coalition supporters, we're sitting down. We're not pressuring CARICOM to say, listen, you have to be fair and live up to the same standards and treat us the same way you treat the PPP. Why are you not condemning racism in Ghana? Why are you not condemning the murder of these two young men? Why aren't you forcing the government to make sure that these murders are investigated? Could you believe these damn CARICOM people sit up in there and got the PPP running around firing black people and killing people, and they can't say anything? We should run them out of Guyana. If you are in Guyana and you are pronouncing on democracy and you're allowing the PPP to kill out black people and fire black people and operate like we don't have no rights, then we should treat them like the enemy too and run them out of Guyana. Maybe I'm talking too much.
I thought you were about to say, occupy CARICOM. That too,
overrun CARICOM. You see how we do things in America? You see these white people, right? They want to go up in the Congress and kill Congress people. Let me tell you this. If they had found a black member of Congress there today, they would have killed that person. If by any chance they had invaded there and run into a black member of Congress, they would have unleashed violence against that person. Right? And the rest of the world be like, oh my God, those white people. It's terrorism. Nobody's calling it terrorism. It is an insurrection. Nobody's calling it an insurrection. Why? Because they're white people, Donald Trump supporters. So there are two standards in this country for law enforcement. I want to come back to that. It's important. The way they treated, the entire world now sees that the way they treated those Black Lives Matter protesters, when they fire shots at them in Washington and Seattle and Portland, and fire rubber bullets at them and fire tear gas and what do they call these bombs that startle you, right? And pepper spray. That's how they treat black people when we protest peacefully. We don't have no rights in this place. We're not supposed to have any rights. And I think what they can't stand is the fact that we came out with numbers and we elected Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. If you notice, the only cities Donald Trump was challenging were black cities. He don't believe black people should vote to elect no president. That's it. So that's what he's angry about. That these black people in Philadelphia, right, and in Detroit, and in Atlanta, and in Milwaukee, came out and voted in their numbers and removed him from power. How dare you black people vote in this country that belongs to us? That's what they're saying.
Yeah. Rickford, there is Black Lives, my final question for the evening. There's Black Lives Matter in the US, Black Lives Matter here. Do you have any hopes we're going to find who were the killers of Isaiah and Joel Henry and even Harry Singh?
No.
I mean, we recently learned that the FBI is here now lending some help to the Ghana police force. Any hopes?
The FBI, you sure?
That's what they said.
I don't believe that. I don't believe the killers would be found. I don't believe the Ghana police force wants the killers to be found. I think that there was a conspiracy with people in the People's Progressive Party government and people in the upper echelons of the Ghana police force to cover up these murders and to make sure that the were intransigent and stalled until there's no possibility of recovering any sort of evidence, and then try to stage something like an investigation. But I don't believe that they would ever be found. And if the FBI are in Guyana under the pretext that they're investigating the Henry murders, I believe they're doing something else. I don't believe that there's any interest in the PPP to solve these murders because it means that their supporters will be arrested.
Well, I'm going to leave that there while we home here in Guyana are going to continue to bring the necessary pressures to bear. And also...
I'm not even touch that one. I'll just go
look, no, I was actually going on in my mind is that this is going to be another 𝗪𝗵cie 𝗬𝗵𝗴 issue that goes unsolved because people are being protected. That was the thought going through my head. People are being protected. You know,
just like the 1,400 people that got killed.
Yes, when there are young Black people involved, you can find them quickly, right? When another set of people are involved, you go around the mulberry bush. You've already had the folks here from CARICOM, the security, whoever they are from CARICOM. You said they are a waste, and I agree with you. Now you have the FBI here. Let's see what comes of it. You saw.
I don't believe the FBI. I don't believe it's accurate that the FBI is in Guyana looking at this murder. I don't believe so.
Okay. We also had the gentleman from Australia through the human rights body who came. They give him
Argentina.
no help. They give Argentina. They give him no help at all, and so we know why no help was afforded to him. But we are watching to see what this latest round of quote unquote investigations and so forth will lead us. Rickford, thank you very much for your time, my brother. You are a very big voice out there in the diaspora, especially in North America, a voice that we need. Thanks for spending this time with us and for putting things in context.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everybody.
Same to you, Rickford. Folks, there you have it, Mr. Rickford 𝗏 coming to us from the United, I'm tempted to say the United Third World States of America. Tomorrow morning, as every morning from 9 to 8, I have a program on where I meet with members of the public via Zoom. It's a very private meeting, but the meeting link is shared right on my Facebook page, Sharon Avery Duncan on Facebook. The link is shared there to the meeting. I hope you folks who have issues locally at home, whether you're residing in the diaspora or you live here in Guyana currently, and you have any issues affecting you at home here in Guyana that I can help, take a look at. I'd be happy to hear from you. I am on Zoom privately, that is. It's not broadcasted via social media. It's a private meeting, one-on-one. If you have any issues you want me to take a look at happening here in Guyana, that Zoom in, as I call it, it's from 9 to 10 a.m. daily. 9 to 10 a.m. daily. I want to thank you folks for joining In the Ring. Here is where we contend with ideas brutally. We dismantle misinformation. We fight prejudice and stereotypes. We oppose old and outdated worldviews. Folks, it has been my privilege having each and every one of you. Remember, you have to continue to practice social distancing, wear your mask, sanitize, do not gather in large numbers. Incorporate all of the COVID-19 protocols that are in there, that are currently in practice to safeguard you and your family and your loved ones from contracting and being infected with the coronavirus, COVID-19. We love you and stay safe. Thanks for joining the program. It was our privilege having you.